Hello and welcome to the Make Music Right podcast. We are on a mission to bring non-degenerate music of all genres to the forefront of American culture. I'm your host, Chloe Castillo, and joining me on today's episode is host of the Fire and Freedom podcast, Caroline Joyous. How are you doing, Caroline?
I'm doing so good, Chloe. It is, first of all, such an honor to be on your show. I've been following you for a while, keeping up with your amazing work. And also, you are one of the best pianists I've ever heard. Like the other day when you sent me the message asking to come on your show, honestly, I stalked you and I followed you for a while, but I was just like, I'm a professional on Facebook and Instagram stalker. So and I was like going back on your page and I'm like, oh my goodness, she is phenomenal. And you just seem like such an interesting, bright, exciting person to be around and such a visionary. So I'm just excited for our conversation. So thanks for having me on. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Of course, thank you so much for coming, and you're so sweet. So, you told me when I reached out to you the other day, you said, "Oh, I'm actually a pianist and songwriter." So tell me a
Oh
little bit about
yeah.
that.
When I was like 7 years old, maybe I started taking piano, and I'm not nearly as good as you. I would definitely let me say that you're phenomenal. But I know how to play chords, I know music, and I've taken a few like classes online too as well that are just like worship music classes because I love to write worship music, love to write like praise songs, and so I'd really, really love to put out like a raw, real like praise and worship EP at some point. I think that's like a dream of mine. Not necessarily because I wanted to get like because I want to get into like the music industry or anything. I love music. I listen to all kinds of music. I mean, not I don't listen to bad music, but like as far as genres go, I listen to pretty much everything, even a little bit of rap sometimes. Not that often, but nothing off the table. I love it. You can ask my mom. Like I'll have earbuds in like pretty much all the time, and like 20% of the time it's podcasts, but the other 80% of the time for sure it's music. So yeah, I do. Have always loved to write songs, and I never thought I'd even like consider sharing them. But this year, hopefully, that's something that I really want to do. Is just like even if it's informal, like just sitting at my keyboard, I'd love to share that because like music is such a you know. There's this guy, you may have heard of him. His name's Sean Foyt.
Mhm.
He started the Let Us Worship movement back in 2020 when the government shut down churches. Um, for those of y'all who aren't familiar with him, like he went around to all the major cities and like led worship when all the churches were shut down. And now he's coming to like every single state capital, ending the year in DC. I'm gonna be there. And so it's awesome. But he said something, and I thought it was really good. And he's like, music reaches places that tweets can't.
Yes.
Like, music touches people's souls and people's hearts. Meanwhile, like sometimes just spoken words, they don't hit the same way. People don't connect with them as much. So yeah, music is really important to me, and I think worship is such an important facet of like my faith and my connection with the Lord. And so yeah, that's just kind of how I got into it. I'd really love to learn how to play the guitar. I don't know if you do or not. I'm sure you do. You know how to play? I'm sure you probably
I
do.
don't. I actually would love to though as well. I think it's a really cool instrument. I'd really like to learn it. But no, I'm only piano. Just piano since I was 4, and that's about it.
You're so talented. And I'm not trying to flatter you, but like my piano teacher, she's like and she's turning 70 this year. And
Oh,
like you're right up there with her.
oh,
You're
you're so,
you're exceptional.
well, you're super kind. And that'd be so cool if you release something this year sometime. That'd be really, really awesome. So, yeah, I want to hear it for sure. So, you mentioned something a minute ago about how music kind of goes straight to the soul. And that's actually something Plato talked about, talking about how music, goes past the mental, I guess, like reasoning and just goes straight to your soul. And I was watching one of your videos the other day, and you were talking about how when you open the door to sin and you welcome it into your life and into society, it's a lot harder to stop than had you just not gone there to begin with. And
Yeah.
you said something along the lines of how this is the reason our country's in the state that it's in because we've welcomed sin in as a friend, and you specifically said that we've brought it into our homes and communities and forced it on our kids. And I thought that was so spot on, especially when it applies to music, because in the music industry, as conservatives, we have embraced this kind of satanic music into our culture. And
Mm.
we've just embraced it as normal, and there's just no alternative, so there's nothing we can do about it. And it's like that's such a backwards way to approach it, in my opinion. So what do you think about how conservatives just seem to continue to embrace this sinful music culture of the left into, I guess, our own movement?
Ooh, that is such a good question. I'm so glad you asked that. That is something that, like, honestly, I've thought about a lot, but I've never really gotten to, like, have a conversation with anyone about because it doesn't seem like it's brought to many people's attention. But yeah, I totally see what you're talking about. Even some like conservative influencers I follow, if I listen to their shows sometimes, like they are very strong, like they're Swifties. And I'm not coming at anybody, okay? I'm not hating on Taylor Swift. Like I pray for Taylor Swift, okay? And like old Taylor Swift, yeah, that's my girl. But to like to see the music that we've embraced, like it's almost like we're speaking out against ideologies and we're speaking out against sinful lifestyles, but then we're embracing music that totally promotes that, the very thing that we're standing against. And so like I do definitely think that there need to be more Christians who come out and like come up with alternative options, even like if it's not, quote unquote worship music
Exactly.
with bars, like even the secular is sacred if we make it sacred. Like we can take what worldly and still use that and to bring God glory into like even some songs I listen to, like they're not necessarily Christian music, but like they're just uplifting songs. They're not discouraging songs. They're like they change your mood, they change your attitude and music, like you said, it does. It touches your soul. It changes like your perspective on everything. Like I'll notice a huge difference and like even the way that I think and then like my attitude, my subconscious, based on like what music I've been listening to lately. And like literally Satan before he like fell, he was a worship leader. So like that should show you the power in music and the power in worship. But yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that as conservatives, something we need to do is stop not only accepting it, but stop putting it out there as something that's not really an issue. We're kind of like, oh, this isn't great that this music's out there. And we pick on certain
Good.
artists.
That's good.
Yeah, we pick on certain songs and certain artists, and it's like, okay, that's great, and we're right most of the time. It's like, oh, for example, Doja Cat came out and did this, and it's awful, and oh, how horrific. But then we
Yeah.
still support all the industry around that, and we still support it as something that's just the only industry and the only option we have. So, how do you think the conservative movement can appeal to Gen Z with a culture that reflects our values?
That's a really good question, Chloe. I think Turning Point USA, I'm an ambassador for them. I think they're doing a great job at through social media really like hitting home on the issues that matter most to Gen Z. But I would say the biggest way that we can reach our generation is like by us, Gen Zers, actually like going out and talking to people and initiating those conversations with our friends, initiating those conversations on our campuses, and even like you, what you're doing right now, like getting online and not being afraid to be bold about what you believe. Because like other Gen Zers we're going to empower Gen Z. And like I know like obviously we look up to some people that are older than us and we can follow their example, but like people who are not as involved, they don't really want to look at a 50-year-old to tell them what to believe. They want to look at someone who gets it. They want to look at someone who's young, who understands what it's like to be a part of our generation, to be like super involved like in the digital age, to have social media. And so I would say just by us being willing to be bold and put ourselves out there and get past our own fear to help empower others, that's probably going to be the only and the best way to reach Gen Z.
That makes sense. Yeah. And I think that as far as culture goes with the music aspect of it, I think that as we just said a minute ago, that the conservative movement is kind of still a little bit slacking on that side, I think. And I think that if we really
Yeah, for sure.
if we really, I think if we embrace that, and of course music's just one aspect of culture, but it's a very large aspect. And I think that if we really
100%.
attack it from that standpoint a little bit more than we have, it's going to make a really huge impact. And you mentioned earlier, music beyond just worship music, and worship music's great, but we can't rely on that as our sole alternative. So what do you think um, what do you think the impact would be on Gen Z if we created music on, I mean, all genres and lots of it that was in our culture being promoted? What impact do you think that would have on Gen Z, politically speaking?
Well, I think the best way to combat lies, to combat evil, is like with the truth, by bringing the light, by being representatives of Christ, no matter where you're at, no matter what job you have, no matter what kind of music you're doing. So, like, I think us producing that kind of music would, oh my goodness, it would tremendously affect Gen Z because whether they even realize it or not, like, they're going to be influenced. Because, like, who doesn't listen to music? I mean, unless you're deaf, pretty much all of us we inevitably listen to music. We don't really have a choice. It's like,
Oh
it
yeah,
affects us all. And so, I think the effects of that would be tremendous. I think you would definitely see the fruits of that in our culture, in our politics. This is kind of a little bit of a rabbit trail here, but I have a point, so just hang in there. Pastor Jensen Franklin, I don't know if you've heard of him, you probably have. But he said something that I thought was really good. He's like, if I do my, he's very bold. He's awesome. Highly recommend you go listen to him. But he said, if I as a pastor, then I don't need to go around telling people how to vote and like telling people what stance to take in culture because they're gonna like the fruits of what they believe and what they've been taught, like that's gonna show. So
Exactly.
like when people hear music, even if it's not in their face, like uh Jesus is your savior. Let's not screw America over. Ultra MAGA, like Trump 2020. Like, here's the problem. Okay, look, here's the problem. Like, I love like try that in a small town, Jason Aldean, you know, with the January 6th or music and stuff. That's all cool. But like you're not gonna reach our generation with that.
Exactly.
They're gonna listen to Taylor Swift. Like you're not, I'm sorry, you're not gonna reach Gen Z by being so in their face. And that's something that I've realized over the years is like I had this really sweet girl back last summer, but she totally disagrees with me on everything. She doesn't believe that there's a God. She's like an atheist and very liberal and like she loves AOC. So that should give you an idea. But I realized when I was talking to her, like the more bold I was, like the more she like shut down, you know, her eyes kind of glazed over and she didn't really want to hear what I had to say. And so not to say we shouldn't be bold and we shouldn't like speak the truth and share the truth and no matter what or not, but I think, you know, if we use wisdom and we're like, you know, we're wise in the way that we do this, we can reach our generation without them fully knowing it. Like it doesn't have to be in their face and it could still make a huge impact. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that especially as far as reaching Gen Z, we mentioned like all the Trump music, and I personally love it. I think it's so much fun. But I totally agree. My mom and I talked
No,
about this.
I think it's great. I love it.
Oh yeah, and my mom and I talked about this a lot. We're like, this is not replacing Taylor Swift. This is not replacing that hip hop fun, whatever y'all enjoy. I'm a classical and jazz person myself, so but exclude me from the whole equation. Most of my generation is not going to be reached by Trump is your president music, even though it's fun and it's great, and yes, it has its place
Or
for
like
sure.
Ben Shapiro's rap song, you know?
I loved that. That was so much fun. But yeah, totally though. It's not gonna reach our generation, even though it was like the biggest most wonderful thing he's ever done. but no, but I agree. Yeah, totally. And so I think that as conservatives, we really need to focus in on what our generation, our Gen Z, and the next generation is going to be influenced by in culture. We can't just expect it to be, the Constitution, or we can't expect it to be those kind of things that we as conservatives or, a couple of us conservatives enjoy or find interesting. It has to be something that reaches the masses. And that kind of music's not it. We need a Taylor on our side. We need somebody like that with our values that isn't just promoting trash. So I totally agree with you on
Mhm.
that. What do you think as far as music culture goes for Gen Z? Do you think that our generation understands how destructive this culture is and they just embrace it because that's the only choice they have? Or do you think it's because they are so indoctrinated they don't really understand that it is this degenerate and this destructive?
No, for sure. I think our generation is honestly so deceived as a whole. And I'm not saying that like a lot of us haven't woke up to the reality of what's going on, and that a lot of us don't know the truth. Because I think that more than we think do, just not bold enough to speak out about it, or they don't know how to go about doing that yet. Um, but I wholeheartedly do believe that like our generation, I mean, what is it? Like it's more than any generation in documented history, more Gen Zers than any generation that's a part of like the LGBTQ community. Also, more than any generation in documented American history, our generation is the most depressed. Also, our generation is the furthest away from Christ. There are less Christians in our generation than any generation in documented American history. You can't tell me that those things don't correlate.
Mhm.
And so when I look at everything, I'm like, I know this might be kind of annoying, and I've just realized I have to get past that because non-believers aren't going to see it the same way until they wake up, until God reaches them and we plant that seed. But like the reality of it is like, they're just blind to the truth. They just don't realize. And maybe there are some, like, Christians conservatives who have like they've started to realize they're kind of convicted about it, but like there are no like super great alternatives for them for the kind of music that they do like to listen to, like you brought up. But like you're taking the steps to start doing so. And I think that's super urgent because I haven't seen literally anybody do what you're doing. I was driving my brother home from school today talking about on your podcast, and I was like, it's really interesting because nobody is doing what you're doing and initiating this conversation. And I think that's really, I think honestly that's really neat and something that really is not talked about at all nearly enough. But yeah, I do think overall the biggest problem that we're facing, no matter what, even it's just our generation of Jesus. I hate to be like so black and white like that, but that's what it comes down to. That's the root of all of this. That's why they're not convicted about what they're listening to. That's why they're letting culture infiltrate themselves. It's like they're not awake. They're asleep. And it's our job to go in there and tell them the truth and let God determine the outcome and let them determine the outcome. But we have to be bold. Now's the time.
Absolutely. So, Caroline, speaking of being bold, you're starting a new podcast, right? Fire and Freedom.
Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about that.
So this is something that I've had on my heart for years. For pretty much like 2.5 years, I had this show called like the Talk. And I say show like in parentheses because it was like 2-minute videos that I do like a few times a month. I started when I was like 13. And so, I would just talk about different political issues. I really got into all of this like just as a Republican. I was kind of leaving my faith out of it. At the time I was super young, like still in middle school. I realized, like what you were talking about earlier, Chloe, is like how so many conservatives and so many like Republicans, they don't know Christ, they don't know the truth. Like they're kind of still like even though they're voting the right way, they're still blind to a lot of the stuff that's going on because they view things like through the lens of left and right, Democrat and Republican, when we view things through like a spiritual lens, like good and evil. And it just so happens that like the truth lines up with the right way more than the left. But yeah, so I was like, I've been really, really praying. Honestly, I've never been a huge social media person, which is annoying because I'm like, I know I need to make like content and stuff. 'Kay, if you want to reach people, that's what everybody does. But I just like, I prayed and I prayed and I was like, I literally had no direction for what I was gonna do with a podcast. It'd been a big dream of mine to do like long format stuff versus just like short videos. And I couldn't come up with a name, honestly. And I was like, I don't know how to do this. If it should just be like political, if it just, and it just came to me. I was like, fire and freedom. Let's do political and cultural issues and like faith issues in the church from a biblical perspective, like from a strong Christian perspective. Because like the truth is, I'm not in politics as a Christian. I'm in politics because I'm a Christian. And I know that like you're the same way. Like what you care about, it stems from something deeper, from you being a Christian, not from you like working with PragerU or Turning Point or anything like that, but because like you care about these people's souls and their hearts. And that's really like I just want to bring authentic, like bold conversation to these issues from a Christian perspective because I really feel like that's something that's lacking, which you are also doing, and I love it. So you're definitely filling in the gap there, but it's like there are no Gen Zers that are doing this, and like I said, Gen Zers like they want to listen to Gen Z, so we got to show up for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited to hear this. I can't wait for it to come out. I love the name too, Fire and Freedom. It's exciting. It's a great name. So, Caroline, where can people find you?
Y'all can find me on Instagram at Caroline Joyous. I just got on TikTok, but like I don't know how long I'm gonna be on TikTok. I don't think we're gonna ban it anytime soon, but it's Caroline Joyous, and pretty much everywhere Caroline Joyous.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It was so much fun talking about this.
Goodness, girl, this conversation flew by. It was such a blast talking to you, and again, you were just such a light. Keep doing what you're doing. I love watching you. And to anyone listening who doesn't follow her, which I don't know why you wouldn't be, but like go follow her right now, share her stuff. I literally dare you because she's awesome, and you can just tell that there's like a zeal about you. You're authentic, and I love it.
You're so sweet, and same to you. You are, definitely a light in our generation for sure. And it's so cool that you have been for so long too. I love it. So thank you so much, Caroline.
It was my pleasure.